I now have my reference images set up in Maya. I've got my front, my side, and my top view, and they all have reference lines and they're all the same aspect ratio, so they're all about the same size. So let's go ahead and bring those into Maya. Now I've saved these out to my Chapter 1 Source Images folder. Now I'm going to start building this project in Chapter 1. So I'm going to do File, Set Project, and make sure that I click on the Chapter 1 folder, and that's going to set it. And I want to do this at the beginning of every chapter just to make sure that the images are all aligned. So now that we have this, we can start creating our reference. So I'm going to start off with a plane, and we're going to start off with our front view. So I'm going to create a NURBS plane. So I'm going to go to Surfaces, create a NURBS plane, and the size of this, well, it's going to depend on what scale you want it to be, but for this one I'm going to make it probably a width of somewhere around 16 or so. And then you'll see I have this NURBS plane, but I need to put the reference image on it. So we're going to do that using a material. So I'm going to go into Rendering. And let's just apply a Lambert material. Go over here to Lambert. And then I just want to go to the color channel and double click on this checker. And we're going to select a file. So the image name is Character Front. Open that up. Hit 6 to turn on hardware texturing. And there it is. Now, I don't know if my NURBS plane is the right aspect ratio. It may be a little too wide or a little too narrow. It looks kind of close, but let's go ahead and get this exactly the way that we want. So for that, I'm going to have to do two things. One is I'm going to have to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to do image size, and I'm going to see that this is 700 by 600 pixels. So what I'm going to do is go into a calculator and divide 600 by 700, and I'm going to get 0.85 or 0.857. So if I go back into Maya, you'll see I have this input here for make NURBS plane. And so I have my width, but I also have my length ratio, and that's the important number. So I want this to be 0.857, and that'll make it exactly the right size. So now all I need to do is make sure that this is on the 0 plane so that the bottom reference line lines up with the grid. And then I want to make sure that it's also centered. Now I can make sure it's centered just by typing in 0 for translate X and Z. So now that I've got this centered, I can move on to the next one. So my next image is kind of tall and skinny. It's my side view. So let's go into a side view here and create a tall and skinny surface. Now again, the size and shape is going to be kind of arbitrary at this point because we've already created our standard with the front view. So all I need to do is just make one here, and that's pretty close. It's going to need to be scaled up. But let's go ahead and apply another material. We're going to apply another Lambert material. Click on here, select File, and then open up the side view. So as you can see, this is the wrong way around, so let's go ahead and select our plane and rotate it 180 degrees in Y and move it into place. Now if you notice here, it's kind of dark on this side. In fact, the back of these are both pretty dark. Now we can fix that in the material by going into our attribute editor, going into our material, and just turning up the incandescence about halfway. Now what this will do is make these planes glow, but we should be able to see them a little bit better in the viewport. Now sometimes you're not seeing them in the viewport, so we need to change our renderer. Sometimes we have default legacy viewport works better than viewport 2.0. So sometimes you have to switch between these to find one that works. And a lot of times legacy default viewport works the best, and that's what I'm going to use right now. So again, like we did with the first one, we need to make sure that the aspect ratio of this second one is the same. So back into Photoshop, look at the side and go image size. This one is 300 by 600. So that's pretty easy. 300 divided by 600. 600 divided by 300 is 2. So I'm going to go into make NURB plane and make my length ratio 2. Actually, I was pretty close. I got 1.9. So there we go. And now I need to do some little detail work. So you can see it's a little short. So I'm going to scale this up just enough so that the top and bottom line up. So I'm looking at this red line on the top and the one on the bottom. I need to make it a little bit shorter. And again, I'm evenly scaling it. I don't want to scale it in just one axis. So there we go. Looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to move this back, and I can translate z to 0, translate x to 0 as well. So now I've got this side and that side. Looking pretty good. So let's do one more. I'm going to do this one from the top view. And again, surface. I'm going to create a NURB surface, something like that. Position it. Looks a little wide to me, but let's go ahead and just work with what we have. So I'm going to do rendering, Lambert, add in a file for the top. Boom, there it is. Okay, so now, again, break out our calculator, and this time, image size, this one is 700 by 400. So I'm going to take 400 divided by 700.57 is my magic number. I'm going to select our image plane, go into make NURB plane here and do a 0.57. Okay, that makes it a little bit wider. And now we need to scale this down a bit. Now, the one thing about this is that I want to make sure that this is as wide. Now, this was 700 wide, so it's exactly as wide as this one. So I want to make sure that the outer edges line up. So I want to make sure this is at 0 and that's at 0. And then I just want to scale this up until that hits that, and that should be pretty close. Now again with this one, because it's mostly just from the top, we might not have to worry about the incandescence, but let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn up the incandescence just a little bit, and again that will make it glow so we can see it no matter what the lighting is. So now that we have all of these in place, we can go through, make sure we have proper names for the materials. So I'm going to do, let's just call this side, and call this top. Just cleaning up my scene a little bit here. And now let's create a layer that we can use, and we can turn that on and off. So I'm going to select all of these. We're going to go into Layer, Create Layer from Selected. Double click on it, give it a name. Let's just call it Ref for reference. And so now I can make it template mode or make it render only mode. And now I won't be able to select this when I start to model against it. And then I can also turn on or off visibility. And this will make it much easier to work with. So remember, we're importing images from Photoshop. We need to make sure we get the aspect ratio right. And then in order to see this, we may have to turn up incandescence and also change the viewport renderer. So go ahead and set up your image planes and we'll start modeling.